Welcome to the European CME Forum podcast. European CME Forum is a not-for-profit organisation that promotes multi-channel discussion on matters relating to European and global CME-CPD. My name is Eugene Pozniak. I'm the Programme Director of European CME Forum. We've been working hard on putting together the agenda for the upcoming 17th Annual European CME Forum, or 17ECF, taking place 6th to the 8th of November in Madrid, Spain. In today's episode, I'm joined by Lawrence Sherman to discuss the background and our approach to the meeting to give you a good idea of what to expect in Madrid next month. Hi Lawrence, great to see you here. Thanks very much for joining me to discuss 17ECF.
I cannot believe that we have done this 17 times together.
It is incredible. Yeah, and there are only three of us who've been to every single meeting. Yes, you, me, and Robin Stevenson. Who've actually just watched how, in effect, how CME in Europe has evolved. And of course, we're going Europe and beyond as well with this meeting.
You know, what's interesting is I went to the ECF website and I looked back at the programs from some of the early ones. And I had forgotten how in-depth we got in some topics that for one ECF and two ECF were so important, and now maybe not so much, but that's the evolution. So I really think people should look at that and look at those agendas as almost the history of European CME in this century.
No, that's lovely. Yeah, well put. I mean, and the way that we develop the meeting, of course, we respond to the annual survey that we do each year, and we're looking to actually to publish that from whenever we started. It was about 6 or 7 ECF when SurveyMonkey came online, and it's interesting to see how attitudes, opinions have changed over time, and of course, it's reflected in the program, as you say.
But I wonder if it might be fun to put together like a compilation reel of the agendas over time, and it just might be fun. I don't know if anybody besides you and I and maybe Robin would enjoy it, but I do think it really does paint a picture. It may even be a good paper to write for JECME or something like that. We should probably talk about that.
Yeah. No, and we did, well, every so often I do sort of end up looking back, and I know for the early sessions, there was a huge focus on accreditation. How do you get things accredited? Because right back there at just ECF then, because we didn't know it was the first annual meeting at that stage. It was just it was going to be a one-off meeting, in fact. And at that time, we invited a multitude of accreditation bodies to talk about their systems. So we've seen that they have aligned over the years. And same with the pharma companies. Each drug company had different ways of funding education. So we had the drug company people all lined up talking about their specific way. And there weren't really education providers back then. It was still in the hands of medcoms agencies. The promotional sector were getting their activities accredited. So yeah, we've got to come a long way since then.
No kidding. I remember my memory of one ECF or ECF. That first time was my flight was canceled from New York to London. I was coming in a day early to meet and get stuff together, and the pilot was sick, so I had to go back home and then take a flight the next day. That's my vivid memory of the first ECF.
Wow. And actually, just staying on one ECF, there's something that's just come to mind as well, and especially now, while we're talking about implementing technological solutions to CME programming, that very first meeting, we were approached by a keypad company asking if they could showcase their brand new technology at our meeting for free, no cost. And I said, okay, so on the last day, you'll hand out these sort of handheld devices for people to be able to vote from the seats in their chair. So now we see this as ancient technology, but to think that was literally 16 years ago, that basic keypad with 4 buttons on it was seen as a technical innovation.
Crazy.
Oh,
so what about this year? What are we going to do differently?
Right. Well, first off, just thinking about sort of the technology side of things, the overall theme of the meeting is tomorrow's world today. Okay, so in the UK, there was a program. It was called Tomorrow's World. It was running when we were sort of youthful, and the whole idea was to showcase technology that might take off in 5, 10, 15 years time or something. And and over the past few months, especially with the rise of Gen AI, it feels like each day we wake up, we're hitting tomorrow's world. And that was sort of the inspiration to this. So there will be a focus on newer technologies and especially AI, because that is obviously the special collection that we're running in JECME this year, the Journal of CME. So we'll have a session on that. And the main, I think now that we're actually talking about what's happened over the years, it seems that each stakeholder group is consolidating itself in its roles in CME. So we'll be approaching the meeting at various angles, just examining our CME environment in Europe and around the world.
It strikes me, my brain works in interesting ways. As you were talking about that, tomorrow's world today kind of thing, is with AI, tomorrow has actually become yesterday because we're moving so fast that we don't even have time to have today because today is already obsolete.
Yeah. No, it really feels like that. And with every call that I'm having, planning call for the meeting, people are coming up with fantastic examples, and I'm just even the simplest tips and tricks on how to converse with ChatGPT. It's just a revelation. So I just don't know where we're going to be in this time next year. It's moving so fast.
Yeah, I use AI every day. And I find it to be incredibly helpful. And I see it across the continuum of health professions education. So from undergraduate to postgraduate to CPD. And I see it across the timeline of CPD activities from needs assessment through outcomes. And there's some really interesting work going on in undergraduate health professions education where they're actually using it and comparing it to the assessments that they're doing of the students and really using it to build upon. See, I don't look at AI as artificial intelligence. I look at it as augmented intelligence. And it really helps us do things better when we use it right. And it's not meant to replace everything. It's meant to make us more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you still need an expert, that critical eye over what's come back. So the AI becomes just another team member rather than a replacement for the team.
Right. So let's help me to see what we're doing across the several days of the 17 ECF festivities.
Okay. So I mean, the most important thing is to highlight that the meeting starts at 9 o'clock in the morning on that Wednesday, 6th of November. So normally we'd start at lunchtime and do some pre-meeting sessions or whatever. That's about half the people used to actually turn up. But in response to feedback we've had over the past couple of years now, people are asking in the meeting, they're saying, we get into the meeting and suddenly all these acronyms, jargon are being thrown around. Individuals are spoken about, organizations are spoken about. I don't know who these people are. And so please help us. So that session at 9 o'clock in the morning, which is going to actually address that directly, and we're calling it CME Nuts and Bolts, really. And instead of having a group of experts at the front of the room saying, this is what you should know, and I will share my wisdom for the next 45 minutes. We're actually inviting people who are not that comfortable, maybe newcomers to European CME Forum, not people who aren't experts in CME, but just let's call them newcomers to CME Forum. And they're going to ask the question of the audience, right, I've heard of the following things. Please help us understand what they are. And we're looking to gamify this as well, so it should be fun. And it's just to really ground people in the room, just this is the language that we use and how we operate.
Do you have sort of a list of the terms and people that you're going to sort of go from to help these people to have that conversation, or are they meant to generate them organically?
Okay, so as part of the planning process, in fact, we've collated a small team of people, and before the next planning call, we're going to be looking to between 20 and 30 questions. They fed back saying we've identified the following 20 to 30 things that we're not sure of or we found challenging when we started working in CME. So this is the starting point. So it really is, it's going to be drawn by a group of people actually identifying the challenges that they found when they started out in CME.
That's awesome. Because when you said gamify, I'm thinking maybe you have a big board on the screen with all 30 of them, and you sort of as you tick them off, because some may be covered and some may not, or maybe you do it as bingo and you give out cards, and you just see who's with all different permutations of the list. I don't know. There's just some things that could make it also fun and engaging.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're seeing this as a nice sort of warm-up session like that, and this is the sort of the very beginning, because that pre-meeting session we're splitting into, or that we're presenting two tracks, and one is, and this CME Nuts and Bolts is the beginning of the track which we're calling Core Skills in CME-CPD. So the idea is people get this introduction to the terminology we use in the meeting. And then the second 45-minute session is on the role of the CME provider. There's still a lot of confusion out there. Who are these CME providers? Who are these people who actually develop education in Europe?
Without being too promotional, that may be a point. It's always interesting to me to see if anybody's had any formal training in education or in CPD specifically. But that new course just launched from Amy, where it's 6 modules and really covers, the first module is really the basics of CPD. And then it gets more in depth as some of the topics are explored more in depth. But I wonder if people don't know that resources exist. And that's not the only resource, but I wonder if part of what you can do for these folks is to give them also a list of resources and courses and training that they can go through. Because I know when I've hired people and brought them in, I know that I can train them. I think that I can train them in a way that they'll understand why we're doing what we're doing. Many people that I encounter, not just in Europe, but around the world, don't understand the why of CPD, and I don't know, it's just a thought that maybe we can provide some resources as well.
No, and that's great. And we started this, it started making a dent into this 2 years ago and last year. So actually all registered participants to 17 ECF have access to 16 ECF and that archive of recordings. And also there's a page there on resources, where we were actually having conversation in the room, and we asked people to submit, where do you go for your CME education? Where do you go to learn about CPD best practices? What journals do you read, etc.? And we collated it in a page. So people have access to that who are registered to 17 ECF. And yeah, let's expand that this year. And
let's add the stuff that's launched since then.
Yes. And then that. Oh, yeah, that.
No, but I love that, because I think sometimes we forget that we are one of the tools of professional development for the folks in CPD. And we're focused so much on, I think, the experienced provider, and we're thinking about what can we talk about that's new and shiny and snazzy, and that the basics are often missed. And I think that's a really important point. The other thing that you and I talk about a lot is the faculty within our activities, and providing them with resources, because many of them have never been trained to teach in CPD. Many of them pull from either how they were taught, or they teach in undergraduate or postgraduate as clinician educators, and they don't know the difference between, or not the difference, they haven't built the competencies to teach the adult learner already in practice, as opposed to teaching the student or the trainee. So that's one of those things I think we should probably address at some point, whether it's at 17 ECF or 18 ECF or 20 ECF, but at some point it's one of those things, because that's what I hear the most is frustration with faculty.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And and also with the professionalism of the providers, and just for the whole ecosystem to understand each other's roles, and that this is actually a serious endeavor. Yeah, it shouldn't be a part-time hobby thing that people have a go at because they saw someone do something similar last year. It's becoming a serious industry that needs formal training, as you say. So I think that AME course must be the first time anything outside of North America that's available. Of course, in the US, there's the certificate, the CHCP designation, where people can actually, especially folk who actually start out in CME, can learn the basics and demonstrate it in some way and have those letters after their name showing the world that they have had some kind of training in CME. And that we hear this year after year. Is there something more formal that people can tap into?
I would say CHCP isn't reflective of formal training. It's reflective of competencies and practice. So it may not have been acquired through training. It may have been acquired, as many of us did for years, on the job training, trial by fire. And I know they've done a great job with the CHCP exam to continue to make it relevant as things change. So yeah, I think that's right. And the interesting thing about the AME course, I don't want to dwell on it, is that it was pressure tested in all of the WHO regions. So somebody from every region around the world, at least one, evaluated the course to make sure that it was at least at 10,000 feet relevant to their practice environment.
Great. Yeah, and then carrying on with this sort of core skills and CPD track, then we start getting into educational design. We've got a session on just two educational design, especially one is titled "Knowledge is Not Enough." We'll be releasing more information about this. Sort of the front end planning, and then understanding by design looks at sort of the outcomes piece of the picture, how to design education appropriately, and things like Moore's outcomes framework, the concept of backward planning and things, in a way that's easy to digest, using language that we'll be using during the meeting. So if someone actually goes through these 4 sessions in the core skills track, they will be equipped with the background knowledge and understanding of how a CME activity is put together and get more out of the meeting. Yeah, and then the second track is the specialist group sessions. So these are the sessions that we opened up after the pandemic. And it was beforehand, as we had CME professionals meeting at ECF. So a group from pharma would get together and meet in a room to talk about their things, which of course led to Article 16 of the FBA Code of Practice and things. That was year after year of discussion and collaboration in that way. The medical societies present their perspective on their role in CME. And this year actually we're starting off with the accreditors. So members from the International Academy for CPD accreditation are running a session just to talk about the value of accreditation, not how to get things accredited or the actual process, but just why is it there and why is it important in our ecosphere here.
Are they going to cover what to do if you're in a geography where accreditation doesn't exist?
I would hope that is covered, that someone would ask that question, because that's critical to the work of the International Academy, because of course they're members there from countries with mature systems, US, Canada, through several European countries, and then the countries where accreditation doesn't have that kind of weight. So what is the value of accreditation then? So that'll be a perfect question to ask them when they're presenting on that Wednesday morning. Then we have a session that members of the Good CME Practice Group will run with members from the pharma companies. So they're going to be talking about how to essentially navigate RFPs and grant requests and what are the appropriate relations between education providers and pharma. There's so many questions at the moment, so many drug companies, especially the ones I'm speaking to for this meeting, just generally, just saying we're being asked non-compliant questions. They're wanting us to be involved in various things. It says we've got our own rules. We cannot talk to providers like this. So it's important, and we're thinking it's important to have both sides really having a session like this where they can actually discuss, and it's not a one size fits all. There is the, as you know, there's that gradation of how close or far you have to keep from a drug company, but just to bring this out into the open and illustrate it in real life.
Yeah, it's funny. I think about the bad CME practice group as opposed to the good CME practice group, and those folks who have the inappropriate relationship with the ineligible companies, with the supporters of the education. And sometimes it's a matter of the competencies of the provider organization, where for years they had relationships outside of the grant office, and now they have to work with the grant office, and they don't realize that they can't continue to talk to the people outside of the grant office in addition to talking to the people inside the grant office. I think that's such a worthwhile session, and I love that it has the two sides of the coin. Right. So I think that I'm sure the supporters that you have, the representatives of industry, are those who get it. And that's important because sometimes it's the provider that has to educate the supporter when the supporter isn't one who comes to ECF or the Alliance meeting or AME to understand how to work compliantly. So, I think that's great. And there's almost a need for a guide for those supporters at some point.
No, absolutely. And it's one of these things that we're trying to work out when we would be bringing up the situation in the UK and the mess there with sort of the CME system and funding and excluding UK healthcare professionals from internationally funded CME-CPD activities. But it's this kind of session that brings to the fore the importance of just understanding appropriate conversations and relations, and not having a situation where drug companies are responsible for content, because that's just completely non-compliant and should never be considered as accredited CME.
I'm going to say it was 2013 when I gave a presentation together with somebody from a supporter organization. It was when Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, the book was big, and it was a play on Broadway. So it was Jason Singer from Lilly. He and I did almost a road show in several conferences. Providers are from Mars, supporters are from Venus, because there was that need to understand each other's environment, right? It's almost like interprofessional education. It's you've got to learn from, with, and about each other. And sometimes the providers don't understand the challenges that the supporters have within their own organizations to remain compliant and to get the funding that they can then hopefully give to our good CME providers. And I think it's sometimes just that lack of understanding leads to perhaps some of the challenges. You bring up that UK situation. For the first time ever, I saw an RFP containing the word geofence, where a supporter said, we have to, in order to be a recipient of a grant, you have to demonstrate how you will geofence and block UK providers from any online education. I'm like, wow. So we've got to cover that. We've got to talk about that.
Yeah. No, and RFPs that are being issued, this RFP, geographic scope, anywhere in the world except the UK.
Right.
But the challenge we have is that people in the UK can't see that they're blocked from this. It's like trying to prove a negative or proving that something doesn't exist. I still need to find someone in a position in the UK who can actually sort of look up, or maybe pop over to France and be physically stopped from entering a satellite symposium because they're British, to actually understand that the British healthcare professionals are being excluded from CME. it is a bit bonkers. But anyway, yeah, we'll cover this and the situations in Italy, Spain, Germany, other countries throughout the meeting. And then the last of the specialist group sessions, we've invited some members from the medical societies in Europe to discuss their side of the story. But of course, they are as much sort of education providers as sort of the rest of us who swim in these waters, as it were, with challenges with addressing learners and developing effective education.
Right.
So this is brand new then for this year. Yeah. So this session, which hopefully will give people the confidence and competence to feel more engaged and attuned to the meeting itself. So then we go into the main room. I'll start off with sort of my usual half-hour presentation on the results from the annual survey and having a bit of reflection of what's happened over the 12 months since we met last year in The Hague. And then the first sort of plenary session will be dedicated to the special collection in GECME. So we've had a good batch of papers, not a huge number of papers, but good quality papers have come in on using AI in that CME environment. They should be published in time for the meeting, but a few of the authors who've had their manuscripts accepted will be there presenting their work and discussing their experiences when it comes to implementing AI solutions in their CME programming.
Well, when we first talked about that special collection in AI, two things. One, we knew that it was going to be new and that by the time the deadline was approaching, there weren't going to be a huge number of people who've already had the experiences and outcomes from implementing some level of AI within their educational activities or in their planning process or whatever. So I think this is a first step, but I think it should be considered an extended special collection because we should encourage people as they are now using it and having that lived experience to submit so that we continue the conversation. Special collection doesn't end. We even, remember, we thought about having it as a 2-year window instead of a 1-year window, but I know for the sake of the conference, it was important to have it as the 1-year window. But I'd be interested, and I would encourage people to continue to share what they're doing quickly. And the nice thing about GECME is the time to publishing from submission is quicker than a lot of other journals. And that's an important factor because if we're going to share best practices and we want to get it out there in a scholarly fashion, we've got to use platforms that can get it out fast. If we wait a year for peer review and delay, by the time we publish something about AI, it's going to be old news. So I think it's important to remember that as well. So it's a good number for the time that we had to get it done.
Indeed, absolutely. And even since the deadline, but since then, and even actually this morning, so we're talking on Friday afternoon for me, this morning there was someone who got in touch with an idea for their poster, and they said it was so good that we extended the deadline for 2 weeks because in that time they've analyzed their own work in AI. It was a beautiful, beautiful AI project, and they'll be submitting it as a poster. So it's practically like a hotline session. So yeah, and there are a few other places in the meeting as well where we'll be showcasing some really cool sort of implementations of Gen AI in the programs as well as this. So that this theme will run through the meeting, which I'm very much looking forward to seeing what people have coming up with.
Yeah, there was an interesting session in the CPD track at the AME conference on Gen AI in CPD. It was really provocative and really good and standing room only. So it's definitely something that people are thinking about.
Great. And then after the coffee breaks, we go to our Wednesday workshop sessions. Now, usually these were 90 minutes each. So the second change that we've introduced to the meeting is actually cutting this down, because the feedback we're getting from people saying, well, that's great, but I wanted to also see another workshop or all 4 of them. So with agreement, I discussed this with the workshop leaders last year, who were just saying, yeah, that's fine. We can actually compress things into 45 minutes, and I'll be happy to repeat it as well. And that was actually a personal preference I had from years back. I remember repeating a workshop actually 3 times. I just didn't enjoy doing it. So I didn't want to inflict that on the colleagues here in at ECF. But everyone's happy to do this. So we'll have a repeat of the workshops. People can attend in person 2 iterations, and yeah, and we'll be able to have more people involved in the workshops.
I like that, you know, the amount of time you spend within a session or an activity is directly related to what you're trying to achieve. So if you can achieve something in 45 minutes, sometimes I think 90-minute workshops are too long, and you sort of lose them a little bit, even with the best workshop facilitators. So I think the idea of 45 minutes, make it concise, it challenges the facilitators and faculty to really get the stuff done and be provocative but wary of time. And I also like the idea that people get to see every workshop, because that FOMO, you know, that fear of missing out, it's true. You know, I hate when I go to a conference and there's 3 or 4 or 5 parallel sessions, and I pick one based on the abstract and the title, and I go in, and 10 minutes in, it's not what I expected. And by that time, going into the, you know, the other session that I would have wanted to go to, I missed the impactful part. So this is good. It sort of reduces FOMO.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. And actually, that's a really important point. Yeah, knowing what to expect. So in fact, before the meeting, each of the workshop leaders will be recording a teaser video, which we'll have on the website. Everyone can see that, so you can evaluate that. And even the live on site, before we break for the coffee break, we ask the chair of that session to invite the workshop leaders to give an elevator pitch. So they have, like, I don't know, 30, 90, 120 seconds or so to actually pitch to the room their workshop, so that people actually, yeah, instead of just relying on the title and the abstract, you can actually see the character of the person, and just thinking, yeah, I'd like to go with that content, with this team or that person to the room. So yeah, we'll try and help participants to work out where they go. Yeah.
Now I'm having FOMO because I can't be there on Wednesday.
Well, don't worry, because by the time you're there on Thursday morning, yeah, what we do is to try and address the FOMO thing, which we've been doing for a few years now, is a reflection session.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have a moderator actually interviewing the workshop leaders to actually just bring out, they're not allowed to talk about their learning objectives or what they were hoping to actually address, but talk about the outcomes, how people responded in the rooms, maybe compare and contrast the 2 groups. So people will be able to at least get a sense of what they might have missed out the day before, or just further insights into the sessions they did attend. So that's how the second day will start. And then during that Thursday, we're going to have these 3 sessions that we started doing last year, and we've changed these a little bit as well, because we've got the opposite challenge. Last year we had half-hour breakouts, and they weren't quite long enough to get into the into the subject matter. So these 3 sessions, they're 1.5 hours each. So we'll be, again, people can choose which breakout they go to, have 45 minutes there, and then there's the Q&A panel discussion afterwards. And the first 2 we've called Thriving Today, where we'll be looking at things like, you know, what's current best practice, just to either confirm what we're doing or perhaps learn, yeah, from people doing things well. Yeah, just getting up to speed with best practice. And the second session is called Anticipating Tomorrow, where we're looking at sort of newer kinds of innovations that are being implemented in CME that providers can learn from. And so it's not horizon scanning, it's not what might be possible in 5 years' time, but it's sort of good examples of things we could implement today.
Is that the one I'm a part of? I can't remember.
Actually, you are a part of that one. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, EP looks at notes. You're doing,
if he disappears.
Readiness to change. Yeah, you're looking at learner behavior, aren't you?
Yeah, and educational psychology.
Excellent. Yeah. So, and in fact, this year we had calls for abstracts for everything from, well, posters are running now, but for all these sessions, and we really had to reject quite a few this year. Unfortunately, a lot of high quality submissions have been coming in. So, yeah, we've been able to choose the sessions that sort of sit well together, and should promote, good discussion. And of course, you're involved in between these two sessions as well. Being sandwiched in that, we have the ever popular Lunch with the Learners. And I think we found now three learners from Madrid, two physicians, one nurse, but it's all subject to clinic obligations, etc. But it's, yeah, there's a cool group of people who sort of, we can do that again this year, Lawrence.
And I will do it in Spanish. Because
Excellent.
to be respectful of our learners and knowing that we're in Spain, we should do this in Spanish and have AI translate into English.
Ah,
Es posible, mi amigo, porque yo estoy muy confortable en español porque tomo clases español para medicina.
Muy buen. Está muy importante.
Very
So,
close.
yeah, and the idea here is that we just invite CME naive healthcare professionals to the meeting. So of course, the whole meeting, sometimes we're patting ourselves on the back going, hey, here are all these fantastic things that we are doing for our learners. Well, let's get some learners in the room and ask them, how do they get their education? What do they think of the CME environment themselves? And how well are we serving their needs?
What a great idea. And to be honest, I don't know that I would say CME naive. What I would say is they're CME consumers as opposed to CME developers or teachers. And it's important to understand what you said, because that's who we're teaching. And, the nice thing is we've been doing this, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years now. I can't even keep track anymore. 10 years we've been doing it, that we do it in different places. And I remember we did it in Barcelona, and it'll be interesting to say, because my friend came into that one with his trainee, right? It'll be interesting to see even the difference between Catalonian Spain and non-Catalonian Spain, Castilian Spain. So I think it'll be really interesting, and it'll be a fun conversation. But I know one of the things that you and I have talked about is we both learn every time we do that session. And I think as what I've seen over those, I can't believe it's 10 years, but over those 10 years is that our ECF participants have become more and more willing to engage with the learners and ask the questions and be comfortable, and be vulnerable. And I think one of the things that I'm going to try to bring out in the intro to the session is that our learners are coming in here and they're vulnerable. They're putting forth their personal preferences and beliefs. So I think we have to sort of make it a safe space for everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And when everyone's comfortable and relaxed like that, we really get some fantastic insight. Yeah. And every year there is always a fantastic take-home message.
So it'll be fun. Almuerzo con los estudiantes.
Excellent. So the Thursday finishes with actually the third iteration of that sort of 45 minutes and discussion afterwards. And all I think on the website, I'm just putting down case challenge right now because we're structuring something. I want it to be a little bit of a surprise. It's going to be something related to patients. And like last year, it worked really well where we had a case. So yeah, last year we had just a slide with, let's say, a bad CME practice kind of example. And everyone was split into their pre-assigned groups, and they had to look at that example through the eyes of the leadership of that group. So it's that stakeholder group. So whether they were accreditors, or whether they came from pharma, or whether they're education providers, and actually just work out what were what was going wrong, what was fine, etc., or what was being done well. And we came into the room for the discussion. We're planning this with the workshop leaders and the moderators to make sure it's slick so that we hit some really important points. And I think it might be a little bit contentious, so it'll be a great way to end Thursday, because that's really the hard work day, I think, right from the morning, a lot of content, and it should be a lot of fun as well.
I love that.
And each day at the end, we have a networking reception. So for an hour, hour and a half, it's a time to relax in the poster areas, with a glass of orange juice or something, and to actually be able to network, discuss, not just with the poster authors, but with each other. And it's always a very popular way of people getting together and just sharing some thoughts, ideas. And
I always like that. The opportunity for informal and incidental learning is so important. And the network, I know people appreciate that. Now, if you need help selecting the juices, the local juices, happy to be part of that planning committee.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you. And actually, on the subject of posters, we'll also be doing a couple of poster tours. Now, that'll happen during Thursday as well, because it's really important. Because quite a few times, posters that are presented by participants of ECF, it could be the first professional poster that they are presenting, and we want to encourage this as much as possible. And even for years, why we set up the Journal of CME and we set up these poster sessions at the meeting is to promote scholarship and sharing of best practice, which, quite frankly, we haven't been that good in Europe. And it's something I was always impressed with going to the US meetings, is the way that people are happy to share their ideas. And it's, say, in Europe, it'll be like, well, why would I talk to a competitor and tell them all my secrets? It's not, don't tell them your secrets, but share best practice to make our CME environment better.
Yeah, and I think that's something we really need to address. I love that we've included posters more than years, and I think we need to encourage more sharing, more scholarship. When you see other aspects of health professions education, the AME conference is a good example of it. There are hundreds of posters. You can't get through the poster hall in a day. And it's divided up by topic and sessions. I know that we'll never have that. But I do think we need to encourage our people to submit beyond ECF as well, and understand that there's the opportunity to promote that scholarship. I think, scholarship in CME is deep rooted in Canada, in the US, and then there's a huge drop off. And I think you're right. I hear that I can't share my secret with any other person. I had this conversation with somebody last week, and the reality is you're not sharing your secret, you're showing your success. And showing your success can't be replicated by somebody else. And by the time you've shared your success, you're onto something new. So even if somebody tries to do what you did it first, and you have an example of it, and it's in the public domain. So you did it, and you had good outcomes and good response, apparently. So it's meant to help you. It's a self-marketing tool almost. So people should not be afraid ever to share their work.
Yeah. And I'm seeing it being included more often now in pharma RFPs as well. How are you going to disseminate the results of your educational activity, which we're paying a lot of money for as well? Which is quite normal with any grant giving body, whether it's from the European Commission or some national governments. It's an expectation, if you've received funding in some way, is to disseminate those results. So yeah, presenting posters is a great way of doing that. And we've got a good crop this year. And actually, by the time this episode comes out, the deadline will have finished. But we're still receiving submissions today, Friday, and we'll expect a few more on Monday as well. So that should be really worthwhile.
I love that, and so I'm looking forward to seeing these posters. And the one you were alluding to before about the AI, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it's great. And then the final day, which is a half day, we have a number of it's actually sort of panel sessions now, so we can actually sort of I don't want to say sit back. I think we can sit in the plenary room and sort of consolidate the experiences over the previous couple of days, and just look at sort of some global issues. So we start off actually as a session that you're chairing, the CME around the world.
I am.
Moderating this. Oh yeah, yeah. And we've got some interesting people from outside of Europe to discuss just their experiences there. And of course, with your work that you've done with Amy on the CPD surveys around the world, it's truly a global survey. So I think yeah, what we've discussed already and the ideas of your approach of approaching things by geography. And do you want to say a few words about that? Have you had any sort of further thoughts?
Well, the one thing that hasn't been done extensively that we tried to do was study CPD systems around the world. And we did it in a very deliberate fashion. We talked to experts in over 40 countries. And then we did a survey of practitioners. And so that goes back to that point of the learners. Are the learners satisfied with the CME that they get? Are they aware of best practices in CME and CPD? What are their challenges and obstacles? And, it could be, it was a needs assessment for what we do. It was a global needs assessment of the learners, the consumers of CPD. And there were some surprising findings in there. I know you saw the paper in Medical Teacher that was sort of the summative paper, but we have one paper that came out in JECME, and I have three more that's going to probably come out probably before the meeting that focus on the region. So Europe, Latin America, Middle East, North Africa, in addition to China. And then there was another paper that came out earlier this year also on Southeast and East Asia. And there was the Japan study that we did all with the same methodology back in 2018. So there's well over 50 countries worth of data and information from the expert perspective. So how is CPD done and how are physicians trained, down to what the appetite and preferences and barriers and obstacles of the learners. And I think there's a lot of interesting points. So I'll try to bring that out in that panel, but I also want the panelists to speak of what they're proud of in the CPD in their area and where they think they can share a best practice. So I think it'll be a fun session.
Absolutely. That's great. And it's
Once
fantastic.
you tell me who the panelists are.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we'll be announcing names as well in the next few weeks, and we'll have a planning call very shortly to go through those. And then the session after that is we're getting a group of interesting people here to talk about the expectations and core competencies of the CME provider in tomorrow's world. So still in this theme, okay, so like from that pre-meeting session where we're talking about these are the skills and competencies of the provider today or required of the provider today. It's looking at, in the near future, how do we expect the CME provider to look? And actually for this to be understood by the other stakeholder groups as well, because each group, we see that whether it's the pharma industry, medical societies, the accreditors, the world is moving really fast, and actually to determine how CME activities are planned, developed, and delivered. These feels like shifting sands. We have to plan for tomorrow, so we'll have a good session exploring what this could be looking like.
All right.
Right. And then we'll have an update from the Journal of CME, because we'd have had the board meeting the day before. We'll talk about whether we're extending the special collection or if overlapping. There might be a new deputy editor announced. Yeah.
Is it a deputy like a sheriff's deputy? Do they get, a whole uniform and a cowboy hat?
I think it's just a starred badge and that's about it, but lots of authority.
Yeah, that's why I didn't apply.
And then finishing off with our sort of traditional what the future holds panel discussion as well, with some thought leaders in CME considering the future. And of course, right at the end, the whole purpose of European CME Forum really is for people to have their questions answered. Lawrence, I mean, this is a thing that we've been doing for 16 years now. Yeah, I think we did this every year, apart from the very first year, was you leading this, the unsession, unscripted, unheld back. I don't, just for people to be able to just ask their questions.
Yeah, well, you know, the idea was we don't want people to go home with questions. Now, if questions come up once they get home, that's a different story. But we don't want them to leave, especially questions that they may not have come with. So there's those two categories. People who came with questions or issues that we didn't address fully during the session or during the conference. And then those who have questions that have come up. And I think it's nice to be able to do that. And it's not just the faculty, because there are lots of experts in that room that may not be formal faculty presenting. And we have, through the years, Eugene, tapped people in the room who have a certain expertise to address it. And I think that's the beauty of it, because European CME Forum has, or it very quickly became a community of practice. And so we are parts of each other's personal and professional learning networks. And so we have to be able to help each other. And so that's why I love that session. In some years, we were very busy and inundated with questions. Other years, we did such a good job at the conference that nobody had a question, but we don't want to leave any question behind.
Absolutely. And yeah, so that's the meeting. That'll be 17 ECF. And
we will have a new president.
Oh, yes.
By the time it starts, you know, that's the thing, Eugene, that I always think about. Every 4 years, yeah, the week of ECF is our U.S. presidential election. Yeah, we had everybody there, yeah, in the room, sometimes hearing who won. This year, it's going to be just the day before. So it'll be very interesting.
It will be. It will be. Fantastic. Well, Lawrence, thank you so much for going through the meeting like this today. It's great to have, well, hopefully people listening in find this useful, sort of a single place to actually give them a good idea of how we approach the meeting.
Yeah, it's always nice to have others listen to our therapy session.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, and see you in Madrid.
Sí. Adios.
You can register for the 17th Annual European CME Forum at cmeforum.org/17ECF. If you complete the annual CME survey, you'll also receive a 10% discount in appreciation for your contribution. Registering for 17ECF will give you access to the complete archive of the 16th Annual European CME Forum, consisting of all the plenary sessions with over 14 hours of CME-CPD content from a faculty of 40 experts in European and global CME-CPD. More information on the upcoming 17th Annual European CME Forum and this year's GECME special collection can be found on our website, cmeforum.org. Thank you for listening, and join us for more episodes as we explore all things CME-CPD.